big, small wastewater system in the U.S.?
I would probably say small. There's different types of plants. Like I said, we're activated sludge, which means bugs are helping remove the sludge. A lot of the smaller plants, like I said, Ridgeville, but now they come to us. They had a lagoon system. Stryker has a lagoon system. West Unity has a lagoon. So a lot of your smaller places have lagoon systems.
Places that are smaller than Archbold and Waseon,
Yes.
okay?
Do small towns have them?
Yes, they
Yeah,
do.
Archbold is considered a small town, it's considered a village, so it has a wastewater. Waseon has a wastewater. Places like this, but when we're talking about teeny little towns,
They still have them, but they don't
they
do
don't-
as much
right, they
as
don't-
our plants.
They have a smaller
In Fulton
system.
County, we're the largest wastewater plant. Swanton, like I said, we average 1.828 million gallons a day. Swanton's only around 300,000 a day. Waseon, they're close to us, but they get a lot more sometimes because they get a lot more water into their system. The reason we get so much water is because I talked about ConAgra, which is a large food processing plant. They use 60% of the water that comes here. So we get about 1 million gallons a day from ConAgra.
How is this handled?
How is this handled? Good job, Nathan.
So what happens is we're a class 3 plant, which isn't quite the largest. Class 4 is the largest plants, like your Toledos and your Detroits and your Cincinnatis and your Columbuses. Those produce, tens of millions a day. We take last year in 2019, our population equivalent of suspended solids were like a population of 18,900.
Oh my land.
So if we were just getting people's water from their houses, it'd be like 18,000 people, almost 19,000 people. And then our BOD, which is the strength of the wastewater, and it tells you what's in the water, and our population equivalent on BOD is as much as 36,000 people. And that's kind of low. We've already been in the population equivalent of like 50,000 people on the BOD,
I
and
know when
30,000.
probably when Beatrice and LaChoy were running full tilt.
But right now, Beatrice, our Frozen Specialties is adding on. They've been using a lot more water, almost double. They are or will be the largest producers of pizza rolls.
Oh wow.
So they use a lot of water and stuff to make that food and dough and all that stuff. And ConAgra, they're going to be getting Hunt's tomatoes
Oh really?
in the next few years. So they're adding, so that's why we have to do some of the expansion here at the plant, because that tomatoes, those run around the clock. Those can't stop because we use tomatoes in soups and everything, we add a lot of
Pizza
tomatoes
sauce
to
and
different
all
type
sorts
of
stuff,
things.
yeah.
Do you have a sand trap?
We do not. Sorry. Yes, we do
that's
not
okay.
have a sand trap.
How easy or difficult can painkillers be to be squeezed in the water system?
We don't really test for it, but it is getting difficult. What happens is we don't want you to flush down your old stuff into the toilet. What we suggest now is most police departments take back the drugs that you don't use. Like if you're sick and you don't use all your pills, pour them in a plastic bag, seal them, and put them in the container at the police department. They will take them. So do not flush them in the stool, because it is difficult to break some of that stuff down in the wastewater and it stays in the water, and we don't want to affect fish. Just one example is the drug industry had worked with a pill that was making the fish where they couldn't have babies. So they're producing better drugs now that aren't. Ladies were using them for
different
not
things.
to have babies,
Oh
and
my.
they were
It was affecting
affecting
the fish.
fish in the So,
Oh yeah, you don't even think about that.
but the DEA, the drug agency from the United States, deal with most of the drugs that aren't used through the hospitals and those certain things. We deal with some of it through the dentist, because if any of you have fillings, they have what they call mercury in them. We have to make sure that all of them have, they're called amalgam retainers. So when they take a filling out, that mercury in those fillings is going into the separator, so it's not going out into the wastewater.
Oh wow.
So we have to check that through our pre-treatment program too. So there's a lot of things we have to check so we don't get bad things coming into our plant.
How easy or difficult can antibiotics be to degrade in the water system?
It's about the same as the question before. It just all depends on the drugs. And like I said, we don't really test for them. We do a testing, what they call priority pollutants, and we test for all different kinds of chemicals. So we test for like 18 heavy metals, 29 volatile chemicals or compounds, 57 base neutral chemicals or compounds, 25 pesticides, and just 3 other.
What is the biggest micropollutant problem in the U.S. and your area?
I guess it's more nutrients. Like I said, in our area, we're in the Great Lakes area, and the biggest thing is the blue-green algae. And they're reducing our limits on phosphorus, what we can put into the creek. So what we can put in, the maximum we can put into the creek is 1 milligram per liter into the creek of phosphorus. Because what phosphorus does, it promotes plant growth. And what algae is an aquatic plant, which aquatic means water. So they don't want that in there, because after a while, that algae will suck up the oxygen, and also has a byproduct which is dangerous for people, which is a toxin, which means it's very bad for our body.
What
Concepts.
what concepts are developed against it? How will spread are these concepts? Are there studies about how effective the new concepts are?
So they're always coming up with new concepts, but again, we're talking about phosphorus. And what we do for phosphorus is like I said at the beginning, we're adding lime, and that takes some of the phosphorus out. And it gets heavy and it settles out and goes into the sludge. And then also the brown chemical that made the aeration tanks, the ferrous, that helps remove phosphorus, and that's known as a good phosphorus removal chemical. It makes it, like, remember when I said coagulate means gather together? So it makes it heavy and falls out. It makes it fall out and goes out into the sludge. So that helps. And if you can't do it with chemicals, a lot of places are putting sand filters, which would be almost like a sand trap, but it traps the phosphorus particles in that sand, and it filters them out before it goes out in the creek. Some of the larger, like Bowling Green, they have filters that filter some of that out, and their phosphorus levels are next to nothing.
What?
What
Rob.
problems do you face?
Well, we have numerous problems. Like I said, most of the things are trying to meet EPA regulations. And another thing is everything's just getting so expensive. When we get different regulations, we usually have to add something, or it's always costing people money. That's why taxes are going up. We don't want to raise your water payments, because I don't want to pay higher water bills or sewer bills either, but stuff keeps getting more expensive, and when we have more requirements means we need more equipment, and more equipment means more money. So that's the biggest. And like I said, we talked about over there in that small room before we came here about wipes. That is a huge problem because they clog our pumps.
What problems are you struggling to remove?
And like I said, we really don't have, our plant really performs really well, but like I said, the rags are probably our biggest
Problem because they
they
stop
plug our
things
pump.
up.
But once it gets to the plant, usually in the screen building, before we had the screen building, it would go through all our pumps and get clogged in the pumps in the plant.
Oh wow.
So now it gets caught on the screen, and the rake brings all that out and pushes it out, goes into the dumpster, and then the dumpster's emptied twice a week. So we get rid of all that stuff before it reaches our pumps now.
Awesome.
But it's still an issue in our lift stations.
Are you familiar with
Diclofenac.
Is it a problem in the U.S. water system for degradation?
We don't really monitor
The diclofenac.
that, no, and so we don't, I really don't deal with too much of
Chemicals
that.
are used to remove or treat microplanes.
Micropollutants.
So, like we showed out there, we were skimming, and we also had chemicals to help settle out. Like some of these questions kind of
Join together.
intermingle with other questions we've already asked, but like I said, we've talked about the coagulation. That helps settle a lot of the pollutants out. And also the skimming off the top and off the bottom helps remove the floating and the ones that have settled.
Do you monitor the
Pharmaceuticals.
pharmaceuticals in wastewater before and after treatment?
We do not. And like I said, we do the as far as the minnows and we just make sure the water is good out during different tests. Twice a year, I said we do the minnows and the sand fleas. So we test to see if anything's killing them, and then if stuff is killing the sand fleas or the minnows, what we call a contracted lab, somebody we send the tests out to, they'll say, okay, this chemical showed up in your wastewater that was possibly killing those minnows and fish. And that's a pretty interesting thing, because they have all these, they put our water in and put minnows, and they see how they produce, what the death rate is, what the reproduction rate is throughout this whole. So we basically want no detects on any.
How do you monitor this?
That's
Like,
what he just answered
we
it
just
with
answered
it
the
with the
testing.
testing.
Do you monitor
Cyanotoxin.
Cyanotoxin, which basically is that blue-green algae we talked about.
Oh, okay.
And on that end, the water plant does that. Because that's on the drinking water end, and that's what it affects when people are drinking it, and that blue-green algae produces that toxin.
How do you prevent
Bioactive.
microorganisms getting into the environment?
Well, first thing, it kind of answered these next two questions.
Okay, go ahead.
But what we do with these bioactive microbes are the bad bugs. And remember, we say we use the chlorine, and we destroy them with the chlorine before it goes out into the creek, so it doesn't make anybody sick. If they would be canoeing and would fall in and get in their mouth, or our water would. There might be something else in the creek that might make you sick, but our water won't make you sick. you don't want to drink it, but if it would happen to get on you, or because some of that stuff will absorb through your skin. So we make it clean enough that somebody
Don't have to
could,
worry about it.
you don't want to bathe in it, or you don't, but if you would fall in it, if you were, messing around in this creek by our water, that's why I have to have that sign to say this is wastewater coming out into this creek. So if anybody going by in a boat or anything or fishing knows that that's wastewater.
How do you
Mobilize.
immobilize your microbes?
And
Like
go
I
ahead.
said, the
Yeah.
chlorine.
Yep, go ahead with the
And-
next. Do you
And do
use
you use
biological?
biological cleaning? Example, in
Mobilizing?
wiping cells with
Cellulose?
cellulose
Bead?
bead
Immobilization.
immobilization. I can't speak to
We do
that.
not use cellulose or bead immobilization. I can't even say it. Immobilization. But like you said, our bugs do eat some of the solids, so I don't know if that was
Is that
be
part of
part of that
yours?
question or.
Biological cleaning, I would not know what, I would assume, I guess I'm thinking biological cleaning is gonna be the bugs.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our bugs are eating some of the sludge in different portions,
Right.
different types of bugs. Like I said, we have to heat the digesters because that's different type of bugs, kind of like our body. We have to have a certain body temperature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't have that certain body, they're sick too. Those bugs are sick. They won't survive.
Oh, wow.
So we have to have that digester sludge at 90 some degrees
Oh, wow.
all the time. So we're heating that sludge. So it's getting mixed and sucked through pumps and going through a boiler, what we call a boiler. I didn't take you in that area, but goes through a boiler and it heats the sludge and it keeps it at that certain temperature all year round.
Oh, wow. You.
Do you use GMOs for
Clean.
cleaning? Cleaning.
We do not use modified stuff to clean our stuff.
What is the largest source of
Contamination.
contamination in general?
Like most of the things we test for on our pre-treatment is like heavy metals like lead, mercury. We talked about mercury. There's about 15 different types of heavy metals that we test for. So that's probably the biggest thing. And then we test for, like I said, the E. coli. And then the phosphorus, so we don't get the contaminants, the algae wanting to grow in the creeks and other bodies of water.
How do you think the U.S. process varies from Germany? And Germans have 3 stages: the mechanical,
Right?
bar screen, grit, settlement tank.
And basically, we all saw that. It's basically all the same. Pretty much the same. They may test for different types of things. You probably in bigger cities, they probably test for more things too, just because of population and different types of, they don't have the type of factories and stuff that we have out because they don't have the room for some of the factories we have.
As we went through the plant, I know we answered a lot of these things. The biological stage without elimination of nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphates, we talked about that. We talked about the aeration tank, removal of sludge from the secondary settling pond. We talked about that, right? We saw all that. An additional biological purification stage with specific nutrient elimination. We talked about that too, right? So there's all sorts of stages that we do. And then the sludge treatment and disposal. What did he say they did with the sludge? Where does their sludge go? Did we ask that question? Once he cleans it out, where does it go?
Farmers.
Does it go to
Farm
farmers?
field.
Yep.
So what we have to do is we have to okay fields, and we have to test them for chemicals because we can't have too much phosphorus and different type of heavy metals because the farmers don't want that, and the EPA requires. So they have to okay the fields. We have to do testing before, and then we have to do testing while we're hauling the sludge. What's in the sludge?
Really?
And percent solids, because we have you can only put so much sludge per acre, depending on what the chemical readings were on that first reading of the chemical, the heavy metals and the phosphorus and stuff. So we have to do all that. And I have to send all those sheets to EPA. I have to keep records of everything. So yeah, it's quite a intensive reporting at my job. That's all I do. I do reporting. I do how we handle the money out here. I mostly dealing with the EPA.
Mostly dealing with paperwork, and paperwork is stuff that has to be done.
Yeah.
And who knows where the paperwork goes, but it has to be reported, and I'm sure if you don't report within a certain period of time, they come out and check on you.
Yes, correct.
So as we talk through this, and the last part of this little paper that I have is from Rochelle, that also, we already talked about the thickening agents. That was going to be the ferric. Remember we talked about that? That's going to be your thickening. Isn't that the thickening?
Not really.
What's the
No,
thickening?
we don't use a thickening because we don't dry our sludge.
Oh, okay.
They haul it at 9% is about the highest sludge they want to haul out into the field.
Okay.
But like as far as some places have belt presses, which they put the sludge on, it helps thicken, and then they dry the sludge,
Oh, okay.
and they have it hauled away to, wherever.
Oh, okay.
We're a Class B sludge, which means people can't handle like
Jordan.
you do manure and stuff you buy in bags, put on your garden. That would be a Class A. We would have to be Class B. We'd have to do another step, which would kill more microbes.
In there.
So it has to be heated for so long to kill those microbes.
Oh.
And then you could handle all that by hand. It wouldn't hurt.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you could put it on any type of fields. Ours is limited to fields that are okayed by EPA.
Oh, okay. And then the digestion tank with the anaerobic fermentation. Is that we talked about that, right?
Yep. So anaerobic means no air is being added to that. So what those circular digesters are anaerobic. So we used to have the aerobic out by the aeration tanks, but we added that as an aeration tank. So, and that was a different type of bug, but this anaerobic, we heat it and it does the fermentation through the bugs, and like I said, it stays in there 30 days, then it gets high enough, it overflows, and it goes out into the lagoons.
All right, and then it says after 4 weeks, sludge drying bed for dewatering. You don't have.
We
that.
don't have sludge drying beds.
Right, we just talked about. So, all right, what do we have to say here?
Thanks.
Thanks.
That was
Welcome.
very
Thanks
interesting.
for coming.